What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder, where we talk all things Marvel and MCU. I'm your host, Warren Thompson, and today we're going to be talking about what all of the Marvel fans have been waiting for, and that is the X-Men in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Marvel Studios has been teasing us quite a bit lately with the X-Men, in both some good ways and some bad ways. They officially told us that X-Men exist in the MCU and made Kamala Khan the first mutant ever to be introduced in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Also, in last week's episode of She-Hulk, while the credits roll, we saw all of the sketches that we normally see, and this time we saw Pug looking at a bunch of different shoes, and we saw some shoes designed after a few X-Men, Cyclops included. So another good tease there, but here's the bad tease. In 2019 San Diego Comic-Con, the last thing that Kevin Feige said was, we didn't even have time to talk about the mutants and the Fantastic Four. So we assumed that this year's San Diego Comic-Con, he would talk about mutants. However, he didn't. Then we assumed that at D23, since they didn't talk about mutants at SDCC, they would then at the D23 Expo, and then they didn't again. But it looks like we figured out why. In this video, I'll be talking about how I believe the X-Men will enter the MCU, and it will start before Secret Wars. However, not in the exact way that you expect it to. Well, sadly, I think the report about the X-Men not coming until 2025 is true, but that doesn't mean that we aren't going to see the mutants until then, and I'll explain where I believe we'll see mutants pop up in the MCU, specifically what projects I believe they'll pop up in, and how the actual X-Men team will enter the MCU. Also, to clarify, I do believe that the X-Men are already in the MCU. I believe the actual team is already there. The concept art for Ms. Marvel for Avengers Con shows a cosplayer dressed up as Cyclops, and he's in his X-Men uniform. This seemingly confirms that the X-Men do exist. The issue is, they won't be fully introduced as a complete team for a while. But here's where I believe what other projects the X-Men will show up in until we get to Secret Wars. And I'll explain how I think Secret Wars will give us our first official look at the X-Men and set them up for Phase 7. Now, Ms. Marvel gave us our first official mutant, and I think Black Panther is the next time we get our second, because in the comics, Namor is a mutant. And since they made Ms. Marvel a mutant in the MCU, I would like to assume that they're going to keep Namor as a mutant as well. So there's our second one. Now, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania could give us another mutant introduction. And the reason for that is the Quantum Realm and Janet Van Dyne. In Ant-Man and the Wasp, they rescued Janet Van Dyne out of the Quantum Realm, and they made it very clear that the Quantum Realm activated some type of powers within her. And since apparently the MCU is kind of retconning some mutants, stating that some people are mutants that are not in the comics, like Ms. Marvel, they could say the same for Janet Van Dyne, stating that she had the mutant gene, and the Quantum Realm simply awakened it inside of her. They might not go that way, but there is that possibility, since they already kind of teased us with that in the last Ant-Man movie. Now, following Quantumania, Secret Invasion definitely has some big possibilities of introducing some mutants as well. Specifically, I'm thinking Mystique. This gets a little tricky if that 2025 rule is true, them not being able to use any type of new X-Men characters in the MCU until then, but clearly Secret Wars is going to be all about the Skrull invading Earth, and the Skrull shapeshifting and taking the identities of SHIELD agents, or SWORD agents, or anybody important basically, and anybody that's been important over the past 10 years. And since they're talking about threats that can shapeshift, I automatically think of Mystique. So this would be a perfect time to at least mention Mystique, at least mention that there are people other than Skrull out there that have the ability to shapeshift. This could be a major nod towards Mystique in the MCU. So even though we might not get an official setup for Mystique or another X-Men in Secret Invasion, I am really hoping they at least give us some hints and teases. Now, the Echo series, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Loki Season 2, and the Marvels, I don't really think there's going to be too much of a mutant connection there. That is as far as introducing new mutants. However, the Marvels will have a mutant in the movie because it will have Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel, in the film. They could also say that perhaps Monica Rambeau is some sort of a mutant and her powers were awakened because of the mutant gene as well. It just kind of depends on what Marvel Studios wants to do. But then we have Blade, and I'm really, really excited for Blade. But Blade could definitely throw in a mutant in that film, but I'm hoping it throws in other characters like Ghost Rider. I'm imagining that they'll probably stick to more supernatural things and probably give Blade the focus and spotlight in his own movie, of course, but there is potential there. Now, Ironheart and Daredevil, we're probably not going to get anything about the mutants in those series. However, Agatha, Coven of Chaos, we probably will get at least a little bit of it, because I'm assuming the Scarlet Witch is at least going to be mentioned, because it did seem like in WandaVision they made it kind of clear that the stone simply awoken something inside of her, which could be the mutant gene. Now, we're not really sure how much Agatha, Coven of Chaos is going to dive into Wanda and the Scarlet Witch, but considering the fact that Wanda is the one who kind of imprisoned her, I'm assuming we'll get at least a little bit. And Agatha could make a joke about it, stating that it was the Scarlet Witch, which isn't supposed to exist, but also a mutant, and also a person whose powers were magnified by an Infinity Stone. That's why she lost to her, so they can make a joke out of that. Now, Captain America 4 is rumored to be about Super Soldier Serum, and it's actually rumored to have multiple Hulk cameos. So I'm not assuming we'll get much about mutants there, but the Thunderbolts definitely has some potential, specifically in regards to a possible villain. The Thunderbolts could be tasked with taking down a villain who could be a possible mutant. I think really anything is game with this movie. But then, of course, we get to Phase 6. And this is where it goes down, but where it also gets kind of weird. Deadpool 3. There was a report that Deadpool 3 was going to bring in some of the former X-Men from the Fox universe into our MCU. And recently, we've heard some evidence that actually backs this up. The actor Stefan Kapicic, who played Colossus in the Deadpool films, attended a Comic-Con in Wales, and he stated that Deadpool is going to be filming next year, which also seems to confirm that he is going to be coming back as Colossus. Well, Deadpool 3 is supposed to take place inside of the MCU, so it looks like that report could be true, and Deadpool is going to be bringing some friends with him. And this is sort of a legality loophole. The deal says they can't cast new actors to play X-Men roles that have already existed in the Fox universe, but they can bring the actors and the characters from the Fox universe over to the MCU. And this is what they're going to do for Secret Wars. They're going to combine old X-Men from other universes, because remember, it's all about incursion, universes combining, and they're going to combine that with new mutants from our universe. Avengers Secret Wars comes out at the end of 2025 in November. That means they have time to include some new X-Men in some projects before then. But here's the kicker. I think Secret Wars, specifically the ending of Secret Wars, is really going to start off the official X-Men team in the MCU in Phase 7. We'll have a few new mutants introduced by the end of Phase 6, and we'll also have some old ones from the Fox universe and from other universes, like the ones that we saw in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. These are all going to come together in Secret Wars. So the existence of mutants is going to be made known by Secret Wars, and definitely by the end of the film. And I personally think that after this, they obviously can't ignore the fact that mutants exist, and they need to address this, and they need to seek out mutants in their own MCU, in their own universe. The characters in our universe will see that the X-Men team exists in a few other universes, and will question if it exists in their own universe. And I personally think that this would be the perfect post-credit for Secret Wars. They show a scene of somebody, one of the main characters, talking about mutants and asking if the X-Men or the mutants exist in their universe, in which Professor Xavier then rolls up and says, "We do." I think this would be just the perfect setup for Phase 7, which I do believe is going to focus heavily on the mutants, and I also think it would be the best post-credit scene ever. Again, that concept art from Ms. Marvel shows us that an X-Men team should exist already, and you can't have the X-Men without Professor X. And this is how I believe the X-Men are going to be introduced in the MCU throughout Phase 5 and Phase 6 until we get to Phase 7, where it really focuses on them. But let me know what you think about this in the comments down below, and let me know if you think a specific X-Men could be introduced in a specific project. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest news. For live updates, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.